Hello and welcome to our webcast for March 10, 2017. My name is Christian Lebré and this is Amy Asbrook, the director of Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet.
Hello.
Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet is a non-religious organization by and for people with disabilities and our allies. Our goal is to inform, unify, and give voice to the disability rights opposition to assisted suicide, euthanasia, and other ending of life practices that discriminates against people with disabilities. Today's topic: why are there more assisted deaths in Belgium than Oregon? And real more, okay? Fact: are not there safeguards to prevent problem and abuse? So Amy will talk about it in a few seconds.
All right. Okay. The first topic is, why are there more assisted deaths in Belgium than in Oregon? And there's a lot more.
Oh yeah.
Though Belgium has only 3 times the population of the U.S. state of Oregon, it has nearly 20 times more assisted deaths per year. According to Wikipedia, the population in Oregon in 2014 was 3.97 million, so almost 4 million. The population of Belgium in 2013 was 11.2 million, so a little over 11 million. The number of assisted suicides in Oregon in 2015 was 132, and that's verified deaths, but there were 218 prescriptions written.
Yeah, because this is assisted suicide. The person itself have to suicide himself or herself.
Has to take the drugs.
Yeah.
So not all the prescriptions are filled, and some are filled, but the person never takes the drugs, so the drugs just sit around and anybody could get them, but not all the people kill themselves.
Yeah.
But the number of reported euthanasias in Belgium in the same year was 2,022.
Oops.
So that's a lot. That's
plus or minus 100 times more.
No, 20 times.
20
almost 20 times.
Yeah.
Almost 20 times, a little less. This discrepancy cannot be explained by the incidence of suicide in these countries or in these jurisdictions. The overall suicide rate for 2012 in Oregon was 17.7 for 100,000 people, while in Belgium it was actually lower at 14.2 per 100,000 people.
So it's completely opposite
Right.
of the
So
logic.
they're fairly similar suicide rates in the two places. So,
but even the Belgium one is lower.
Right.
So it's against the logic.
Right, exactly. It doesn't go along with the higher euthanasia rate. The next place to look would be the difference between the laws in Oregon and Belgium. Perhaps the most important difference is that in Oregon, the person must perform the final act by ingesting the drugs, while in Belgium, the drug is injected by a doctor. This shifts more of responsibility from the person who is dying onto the doctor. And we've often talked about how people who want assisted suicide always say, well, I want to control my death, and this is my choice and my decision and my death and blah, blah, blah. Except for what they're really doing is they're giving it over to the doctor to do it. And that isn't really good.
And in Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet, we always thought that it is better, even if we are against. Okay,
right.
It's better to have assisted suicide than euthanasia.
Right, because assisted suicide, there are drawbacks, but at least with assisted suicide, you are performing the final act that causes the death.
So you, at least at the moment you take it, have the will to kill yourself.
Right.
Not somebody else kill you.
Right, right. And obviously there are problems with that anyway, because if you fill a prescription and the drugs are in your house, somebody could slip them into your food when you're not paying attention.
There is some danger even.
Right. Those are dangers, and so it's not foolproof, but Assisted suicide is at least the person taking the action.
We say it's better even if we are against.
Right. Another difference is in who is eligible. In Oregon, the assisted suicide or death with dignity law has the following eligibility requirements. The person must be an adult, age 18 years or older. They must be resident of Oregon. They must be capable of making and expressing healthcare decisions as determined by the attending physician. So the doctor has to decide that they're capable. Have a terminal disease which will cause death within 6 months.
So this is the difference with Canada.
Right.
This is the first difference. The rest is fairly similar.
Right. In Canada, well, it's a difference from Belgium, which is the place we're comparing, because in Belgium there's no requirement that the disease be terminal, and that's the difference between Oregon and Belgium.
So in Oregon, the law is targeted to help people to die when they are already dying in the perspective of 6 months.
Right, and we recognize, of course, that often terminal prognoses are not accurate, but
yeah, even
least
doctors are not very good at it.
Right. And the person must express a voluntary and informed wish to die. And what you don't see here is anything about suffering, because that wasn't deemed a part of their law. So it's not
let's
on the
say
table.
most people are not so afraid of death; they are afraid of suffering.
Right, exactly.
Oh, just an anecdote. My own brother, has been receiving a long time ago, but I've been receiving 17 let's say
last rites,
okay, because doctors say he will die within 24 hours. Please give him a last rite. 17 times he's still alive.
So even at the very end, the doctor's prognosis is not always correct.
Yeah, this one is very, very bad for my brother.
The Belgian euthanasia statute protects a doctor against a charge of criminal offense as long as the following eligibility criteria are met. The person must be an adult or an emancipated minor, or, since 2014, a child who is terminally ill with the permission of the parents.
So that's a kind of proof that the slippery slope.
Right.
The law was kind of tighter at first,
right.
And they go on and enlarge every time.
Right, they enlarged it to allow children, and only children have to be terminally ill.
Yeah.
Adults don't. The person must be legally competent and conscious when making the request. The request must be voluntary, well-considered, repeated, and not the result of external pressure.
Which is kind of impossible to verify.
Right, exactly. The person must be in a medically futile condition. In other words, there's no hope for improvement.
Yeah.
And the person has constant and unbearable physical or mental suffering that cannot be alleviated. So it could be just emotional difficulties or physical difficulties. And finally, their suffering results from a serious and incurable disorder. So there's nothing about terminal illness in the Belgian requirement.
Yeah.
And there's the thing about suffering. One important difference here is the fact that in Oregon, eligibility is tied only to the terminal nature of the illness. This is a somewhat subjective criterion.
But we copy the law from Belgium, not from Oregon.
Canada copied law from Belgium, yeah.
So we will see a kind of lot of death within a few years.
Right. Let's see, this is a somewhat objective criterion, though doctors are not very good at making end-of-life prognoses, as we just said. In Belgium, eligibility is linked to a series of subjective criteria. In other words, a medically futile condition and the person's own perception of his or her suffering.
Which is the same in Canada.
Right, that's what it's tied to in Canada, this idea of suffering. Now, Canada does have this reasonably foreseeable, the person has to their death has to be reasonably foreseeable, but that's being challenged right now in a court case.
Yeah.
So, you know, there are already people who are trying to take that back.
Enlarge the law,
Yeah.
as the slippery slope says,
Right.
and it will, it's just a matter of time.
Right, and also in Quebec, they're trying to enlarge it by allowing people to have euthanasia by advance directive.
Yeah.
Another possible explanation for the discrepancy could be cultural. Nearly 60% of Belgians belong to the Flemish community, 40% to the French community, and 1% to the German-speaking community. Yet, the vast majority of euthanasia in 2015 were performed on Dutch-speaking people. In other words, 1,629 of 2022 were performed on Dutch-speaking people, as opposed to 393 on French people.
So there is a slight difference.
A slight,
between,
huge difference.
Yeah, a huge difference between people depending on their nationality or their group of people.
Right. This indicates that there may be a bias in the Flemish population toward euthanasia as an acceptable option. So we don't know enough about the cultures to say what that is, but
there is something.
There's something there.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, that's
obvious.
consistent.
Something happened. We don't know what.
Right.
We are not expert about that, but something happened.
Right. There's something there to look at. It would be important for Canada to better understand these factors in order to reduce the number of Canadians who request medical aid in dying in the future.
Yeah, we will see about French-speaking, English-speaking, or native people, or kind of native people,
right.
You know, Inuit
right.
and other group of Indian.
Right. Well, we can't learn about that if the government doesn't collect detailed information, and we haven't figured out what they're going to do.
This is very, very, very important, and it doesn't seem to take care of it.
Right, and that's one problem that we're having. You know, if Canada wants to reduce the number of people who request assisted suicide, they better pay attention to these things. But there's no indication that Canada wants to reduce the number of people who request assisted suicide, since they've essentially guaranteed assisted suicide rather than guaranteeing access to palliative care,
yeah,
which is what people really need.
Unbelievable, but that's what's happening.
Right.
Because the guaranteeing palliative care has a kind of high cost, and it's kind of difficult because Canada is very wide, and so at some places they're very low population density. But giving death is kind of easy. It's just a poison or an injection of some kind, and you're dead. It costs very, it's very low cost, and anybody could do that.
Right. Okay, our second topic is the frequently asked question, aren't there safeguards to prevent problems and abuses? And that's a question we hear a lot. People say that safeguards are supposed to prevent problems. Well, many safeguards have been suggested and tried in various jurisdictions. Both the Council of Canadians with Disabilities and the National Council on Disabilities in the US studied the possibility of safeguards in detail and determined that prohibition was the only truly effective solution. In general, there is not enough oversight before the person dies and almost no oversight after the person dies.
Yeah, even in Canada, we're supposed to have some police and some group, a committee who watched things.
Right.
Nothing happened. We saw that there was 3 very contested dying
deaths.
Few
in Quebec.
Yeah, in Quebec, and nobody do nothing about it. The committee should have a complaint about the police, say this is a murder.
Right.
No, nothing happened. They just say there was 3 people who died and not supposed to die.
Who were not eligible.
Not eligible.
Yeah.
That's it. Nothing happened, even to the doctor.
Right. Okay, so the first safeguard that we're going to talk about is the idea of a voluntary request. Requests for assisted suicide should be voluntary and free of external influence.
How do you measure it?
Right. First of all, yeah, it's very hard to measure. It's always up to the doctor to measure it. And here are
It
some.
could be just a simple question. How do you feel? Did you have any pressure on you? No. Okay, go. We do.
Right.
Hey, that's not so simple. The pressure could be very, very hidden and very, very nauseous.
Right.
You know, doesn't know.
Right. So here are some of the kinds of pressures that people can experience that make this idea of a free and voluntary request not very realistic. First of all, discrimination and barriers rather than the person's disability create the conditions that lead to most requests for aid in dying. People with disabilities often lack the health and rehabilitation care, supports, and accessibility necessary to be integrated members of their communities. People who are dying may lack necessary palliative care to ease physical and existential pain. And we know that people in Canada lack palliative care. Only 30% have access to good
A little bit
palliative
more
care.
than 30%,
Right.
but it's far less than 40%.
Right,
So what do we do with this more than 60% of the population who doesn't have any access?
right. We let them die, or we
Yeah.
allow them to have assisted suicide.
And suffering in dying. So, oh, they should have the assisted death. Hey, no, they should have palliative care.
Right. Another problem is the person may face pressure because of economic hardship or family stress. So if their healthcare costs are not all covered by insurance.
Yeah, and sometime one of the family people have to stop to work
Right.
to take care of the people.
Right.
It costs a lot.
Right. They don't have the income and the person throws the family into
And
poverty.
the reaction of the government sometimes is say, we will have a tax deduct a little bit over that, $3,000 a year or something like that. It's only for rich.
If
You
you're
have
not
to have
earning
income.
money, if you're not earning money, how can you deduct it from your taxes?
Yeah, so if you're poor, you are not allowed to get it.
Right.
That's not the way to do that.
Right. Also, another source of pressure comes from comments from family, friends, and medical staff who may make someone feel like a burden and that they're less valuable, that their life is a tragedy, or that they'd be better off dead. And a lot of people with disabilities hear this from their families. And if you become disabled and you're trying to adapt to your new disability and everybody's saying, oh, your life is such a tragedy, you'd be better off dead, it's not going to help you adjust to your disability.
And even some small talk that the person heard in the corridor somewhere from the caring people saying, oh, it costs a lot, we lack some bed or thing like that, they should die a little bit faster to help us, anything like that. Heard from far away, it affects a lot.
Yeah. Another problem comes from disputes over an inheritance, which can lead to family members putting direct or indirect pressure on someone to choose death. So if, there's an estate in question and people are trying to get access to the estate and money is going from the estate to pay for the health care of the person, obviously there's going to be pressure from the family, subtle or not, for the person to die and not drain the estate.
Right.
And that happens quite frequently. The families fight over the estate, and they want the person to die sooner, so there's more money to give out. People with disabilities and elders also suffer very high rates of abuse, both at home and in institutions.
You just have to read newspaper. Every week there is a sad story about abuse or mistreated people in home care.
Right. And it's not just violence abuse, it's also the policies that they have in some of the nursing homes that are just dehumanizing, that make people want to die.
Yeah.
Also, undue influence and coercion usually happen behind closed doors and are hard to detect. Most people are too embarrassed to report abuse, or the abuser is the only caregiver, so reporting abuse would risk worse consequences, such as institutionalization or retaliation.
Yep.
And, you know, it happens a lot in nursing homes that it takes a long time for the nursing home to come to grips with abuse, because even if people report it, they aren't taken seriously. Because they,
or the lack of personnel, so say they under different kind of abuse and say, oh, that's so bad,
right,
we will take care of, we will talk to the people and,
right,
and hide it.
right, exactly, exactly. And, you know, somebody who's got dementia or something who's being abused and tries to report it, they won't be believed.
Nope.
So that often happens. Okay, if you want more information about the subjects that we discuss on our webcast, you can visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/toujours vivant, not dead yet.
We answer to everybody,
Right,
including people who are against us.
right, right. You can visit our website at tvndy.ca. You can send us an email at info@tv-ndy.ca, or you can follow us on Twitter @TVNDY. Thanks to Christian for helping out.
Thank you, Amy.
Thanks to you for being there, and we'll see you next time.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Sorry.